If you have children and are looking for a family-friendly store, look no further than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, and check out awyeahcomics.com for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw yeah! Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Moose has that rare, old-school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. Visit them in Whippany or reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked, underrated chapter in the character's history. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman, examining it within the context of the series itself, as well as the larger Superman mythology. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 4, Episode 3, The Big Freeze, is the Editor-in-Chief of 13th Dimension, returning guest, Dan Greenfield. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is a fun one I'm excited to talk about. So in this episode, criminals plan to rig an election and get Superman out of the way by neutralizing his powers with extreme cold. It aired on March 3rd, 1956. Written by David Chandler, directed by Harry Gerstad. Our guest cast included George E. Stone as Duke Taylor, Richard Reeves, no relation, as Little Jack, and Rolf Sedan as Dr. Watts. So overall impressions of this one?
A mixed bag. I really love parts of it, and other parts of it I think kind of fall. Well, let's put it this way: it's a pretty convoluted. It's a pretty convoluted plot. The notion. Look, before we get into the beat by beat, just in general, seeing Superman all in white is worth the price of admission. That to me, that just sells the entire episode, and all of that part of it just really works. But the reason for it to happen is really kind of gooey. And the fact that it could happen at all is something that I think is worthy of our debate in the next 25 to 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, that's fair. I have to say, I liked this episode, and I liked it even more upon rewatch, because heading into the rewatch, I was like, all right. But I enjoyed it, and there were, I think, 3 things that really stood out to me. I agree with you, number one, wholeheartedly, just about the visual of him in white and the costume turned to yellow after he's subjected to the big freeze. And I think maybe part of it too is that on this show in particular, there's very little variation in terms of what you see the characters wear generally. Like Clark is always in the same suit.
Right.
And yes, the Superman costume, that's typically what you would expect to see, but we look at various Superman stories across media. There's always some sort of different variation that he has to wear for a period of time. But that's largely absent here. So when you get something like this, it stands out even more.
It really does.
Yeah. So
it's not just on the face of it, but it's also a really striking look. You know, I mean, they really, whoever thought of the idea is great. And I was thinking about George Reeves, and I'm thinking, you know, we're in season 4 of the show, and I don't know which version of the story you believe about whether or not he had ambivalent feelings about being on the show, and I kind of figured that him sitting in the, I did wonder whether sitting in the makeup chair, he was sitting there thinking, really, do I really have to do this? But I could be completely wrong, so don't at me, don't scream and yell. But the you know, the fun of seeing it. And he works with it really well too. You know, he's as always, George Reeves as a performer and the nuanced part of his performances and his frustration and in this sense his fatigue. Reeves deserves a lot of credit on that.
Yeah, I mean, even putting aside what we may or may not know about his state of mind, I feel like any actor to be subjected to that, it might give you a moment of like, really, like that's what we're doing this week,
Right. Exactly.
But as far as going back to this episode and the fatigue that you mentioned, that sort of kind of points to one of the other big standout aspects of this episode, the way in which this really challenges Superman. And when we get to the scene deep into the episode, when Clark is with the Daily Planet crew and they're waiting as the returns are coming in from the election and Superman is powerless. I mean, Clark is downright despondent. I mean, he's really at a low point, and there's, until the scientist arrives and explains what's going on, really this big question mark about whether this can be overcome. And I feel like, does this rise to the level of A Panic in the Sky where he's trying to remember who he is, or even The Face and the Voice where he thinks he might be sleepwalking and committing these crimes and he's doubting himself? No, those are in another league. Right. But there are enough kind of shades of that here where I said, oh, okay, like this is what I like, because you're challenging him, and I like that.
Yeah, I agree.
And then the last thing is just, and this I don't know if this is what you were alluding to about, just kind of the setup for this and the mayoral election and the voter intimidation and all of that. But it was intriguing when we get into this idea of trying to encourage people to do their civic duty and vote despite this intimidation and trust them to do the right thing. And I'm saying to myself, nah, you really can't trust. You really can't trust too much. There's no short thing. You really can't. You can't.
No,
That's informed by a 2025 point of view.
It wasn't lost on me. Lost on.
There's that, and we can talk more when we get there. But at the end of the episode, when Superman regains his powers, right? It's not about him punching out the bad guys. It's about galvanizing and empowering the voter to do that, right? And the voter specifically says, "I got this, Superman." And I thought that was a very, very nice touch in this episode.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so good stuff here. All right, we can get into our kind of scene by scene breakdown here. Duke Taylor and Little Jack discuss their plan to rig the upcoming mayoral election for their candidate through voter intimidation. They're joined by Dr. Watts, who claims he's figured out a way to destroy Superman's powers. Destroy them. So he has a very peculiar pattern of speech where he will repeat these key phrases.
Yeah, he's almost like Johnny Two Times, from Goodfellas.
Yeah. Did you like this? Did it wear thin? How did you feel?
It wore thin about 30 seconds in, but only because virtually every oddball scientist on this show is of a type, and after a while, that just like it's always somebody who's a little very nervous and eccentric but a genius. It's like it's kind of played out. So I was like, all right, can we just get on with it?
I know. It's like I get wanting to give him some sort of affect, but then it's like, all right, you could kind of only go so far with it, but.
Yeah.
There was at least one amusing bit where I don't know if it's here or it might be later. I think it's here where the bad guy falls into the same pattern of speech and kind of like catches himself. That was funny.
Yeah.
The Daily Planet crew frets about the election as Duke's candidate, if elected, would open the doors for gambling and other illicit activities. I wonder how much this would really even bother Clark, because I'm saying to myself, this might just liven things up even more at the Tip Top Club for him. I feel like with this mayor, his nightlife would just skyrocket.
Yeah, it would also make it a lot easier for him to find ne'er-do-wells. But yeah, it's all about you got to save the city.
Yeah,
in a different way. In a different way, I like that it's like it's through corruption and political corruption as opposed to the typical device that could destroy Metropolis or a robbery or whatever, fill in the blank.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lois confidently says that Superman will intervene if needed, but Clark, who favors editorials to encourage voters to perform their civic duty, issues a stern warning that people shouldn't always rely on Superman to keep their house in order. What a moment.
Yes, it's great. And it's also, you are forbidden to interfere with human history. No, I mean, it is. It is a very, it's do your civic duty. And I don't know, of course, what the impetus for this particular episode was. But I like that he has that moment. And I like the fact that because I do this version of Superman, because he's a little bit more two-fisted than other versions that we typically see. he has that sensibility of I'm here to help. I'm not here to do it for you. And I like that he's there's an understanding, and also an unwritten. I'm not a fascist. I'm not here to run Metropolis. I'm not here to and also even Lois is thinking that somehow he could save the election, and that actually is part of where I think that the episode kind of. I like the parts that we've discussed already, and we'll continue to discuss. But the idea that Superman's mere presence will save the day at an election, I think is a real, even for the time, I think is a stretch. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I know that. I know it's a tough thing. I mean, there are a few angles to it, right? I mean, one at a very basic level is just sort of the practical realities. Even with his abilities, he can't be everywhere at once.
No.
Right. So there's that. But I think even beyond that, like, I guess what I really liked about this was it's a very valid point that he's making. And I guess maybe his frustration is compounded by the fact that he, as Clark, is offering a pretty reasonable action step to write these editorials. Now, to what extent they'll work, I don't know. But like, he has a plan, right? And I feel like Lois's attitude about it is one of sort of abdicating, right? Their response to an extent, like, oh, well, Superman's got it, it'll be fine. And there shouldn't be this over reliance. I really like that he put his foot down on that.
Well, it's also let's not forget that Clark Kent is the alter ego, and his alter ego is a crusading reporter. So it does play into that as well, that he's like, this is the way to do it. This is the way to influence, people's thinking. And this is the way to do good is through, journalism or advocating for something that's better than what you might have. And yeah, no, it's very civic minded. And I think that, when you talk about quote unquote truth, justice in the American way, or truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, whichever you prefer. It's not all about might makes right. It's about doing the right thing, setting an example, and using the abilities that that's what's supposed to be inspirational about Superman for the rest of us anyway, is that it's supposed to encourage us to do good.
Yeah, and you get that extreme close up on his face as he says it, and I was like, "Oh, it's like season 1 Clark here." I was all about it. My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Zach Moore's Always Hold On to Smallville, which continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk now that their series rewatch has concluded. Listen wherever you get podcasts. Whether you're an independent filmmaker or you just love movies, don't miss these New Jersey film festivals. Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, and Round Reel in Bloomfield. Submission information for filmmakers can be found at filmfreeway.com. Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories? Robbo is that kind of person, and that's exactly what he's doing on a new show called This Podcast Will Never Die. Listen and subscribe today. Single Bound is a new podcast hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics. And if the title makes you think of Superman, you're not alone, as the Man of Steel is a regular topic of discussion. Listen and subscribe to Single Bound on Spotify and YouTube. As we continue here, Dr. Watts shows Duke and Jack his lab and reveals that the plan is to subject Superman to extreme cold 2,000 degrees below zero by luring him into a lead-lined chamber. Notes are delivered to Clark and Lois separately, luring each into position. Clark arrives at the lab, where Duke claims that Lois and Jimmy are trapped in the chamber and that Superman must show to save them. Now, here's the part, Dan, where I said to myself, if this were season 1, I feel like the episode would be over. I feel like Clark would just punch them in the face and we'd be done.
Yeah, because all we'd have to do is go and rip off the door. That's the thing. I mean, he wouldn't. Yeah. I like the gag that every time anybody walks in the room, they comment on how it looks like the inside of a television set.
Yes,
I think that's pretty funny. But yeah, this is where, and of course, I don't know the idea, and I'm going to get past this real fast. I'm not going to make this a thing, but I am going to have to comment on the fact that I don't think, and I think we've established that Superman has enough power and enough. I mean, he's vulnerable, but invulnerability to withstand 2,000 degrees below zero cold. I don't think there's ever been anything that would suggest that this would sap his powers. So the idea that they just simply invent that for the purpose of this episode, I'll go with it, but it really doesn't ring true. It doesn't make sense that it would take away his powers, because every villain in Metropolis at this point would become Mr. Freeze or Captain Cold, if you would rather.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't dispute that. It's the sort of thing where, and maybe this is the Smallville fan of me, where everything had kryptonite involved, but it's like, had there been some element of, we infuse the cold chamber with this meteorite, something, right? Something otherworldly, something to kind of put a little meat on the bone of like, okay, this is why this is affecting him. But it's purely just the extreme cold. And I know they try to make it so extreme. They're like, well, that's why. But I mean, I don't disagree. Also, I mean, I don't know. On the other hand, in this iteration of the character specifically, he's more modestly powered than we see in other stories. And going back to the very beginning of the Color era, when they're trapped in 50,000 BC, he can't break the time barrier, whereas that was something he was capable of in the comics. But your point is still well taken. And I think really all I would have needed is just some meteorite that they use to power it. And then I'm like, all right, fine. There's something else going on there. I mean, the other thing that I bumped up against a little bit is the whole ruse here is Lois and Jimmy are not in that chamber, but Duke is trying to convince Clark that they are, right? Even though Clark realizes that this is a trap. But there's a great moment where Clark walks over to the door of this chamber, and we don't see the effect, but clearly he's trying to use his X-ray vision, and he can't because of the lead line. He's got super hearing. I mean, come on. You know. And then even the scene that we're getting up to here, where Superman walks right into the trap, like literally walks in. I mean, but I know we got to get him in there. It just felt like, I don't know. Maybe there was another approach where you didn't have to physically enter in order to decipher whether or not they were in there.
Yeah.
Once the door was all right. Okay. So despite the obvious trap, Clark leaves and reappears as Superman, walking right into the chamber. He emerges white as a ghost from head to toe, his costume yellowed and his powers gone. And there's the moment where now Lois and Jimmy show up and they have a little back and forth, but then he sends them off. And there's, I think, a really great moment where Superman, he tries to fly. He takes this little jump and just lands. And it's so disheartening, but I thought it was very effective.
I think the first image you see of him, you know, the rudimentary effects that they had at the time for the transformation, I thought was terrific. And, you know, you catch the edits and, you know, whatever, but when you first see him, you know, and he's like chalk white and his yellowed uniform, off-white uniform, and you see him and it's like, holy crap. And it's really cool. And then the way he moves, you know, it's obviously this hasn't killed him because he's Superman, but it has certainly sapped him. And he's not only physically, you know, slowed down, but he's trying to process it mentally too. And I think that's also something that you know, that Reeves really sells. And then, like you said, when he tries to fly and you see just how helpless he is and how he can barely, you know, stumble around. Yeah, very, very effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we see him walk outside and he changes into his Clark Kent garb and he's still white as a ghost, but he's, you know, pulls the hat down.
No, don't stop. Hold on. He still wears the hat at a jaunty ankle.
Yeah.
He's still, that to me, when he's got the hat on and he's, you know, and it's like, oh, that's awesome.
And then at the planet, Clark uses Lois's makeup to disguise himself to look normal, albeit a bit more tan than usual.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
I guess, no. I mean,
no,
it's like...
No. You suspend disbelief because it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Look, the idea that he would go back to the planet anyway and risk being seen in all white, even in his Clark Kent outfit. Like, I mean, the major metropolitan newspaper that has 3 people working for it or 4 people working for it, plus a bunch of unnamed people who only maybe occasionally you'll see. How in the world does Clark get into the planet and get all the way to Lois's office, chalk white, and just nobody noticed? And he would take that risk. and then finally and of course it goes to her office to get the makeup. That's the reasoning for it. But yeah, it's again one of those things you kind of have to look past.
Yeah, I guess the thoughts I have on that are it's such a striking look when Superman comes out of the chamber. It's you almost you want to see them show us more of that, like show him in that form for longer. But then yes, then that would curtail their ability to use Clark. So okay, we have the makeup, I guess, but it's so silly with the makeup that I think I just would have preferred if the effect fades once he's out of the chamber, but his powers are still neutralized. I mean, I guess maybe for the kids, like they really want to have that visual cue. It's like he's frozen, he doesn't have the powers. But if it just kind of faded, right? Like once he's a few minutes out of the chamber, but he still doesn't have his powers, and then we could forego the makeup. But it's fine. Dr. Watts.
Well, it's better than him having a rubber mask that he pulls off.
Yes,
like that'll hoary chestnut. Yeah,
true. Dr. Watts asks for his payment, but Duke reveals that none is coming his way. In Perry's office, the discouraged Daily Planet crew, including a downright despondent Clark, wait as the returns come in from the election. Dr. Watts, spurned by Duke's betrayal, arrives and explains what happened to Superman. By the way, in this moment here, another shade of season 1 Clark, where he demands that Dr. Watts explain what's going on. I like that. A little fire in this guy.
Clark's angry. He's first off, yes, he's downcast. He's physically weakened. He's frustrated. He doesn't know what to do. And this guy comes in and he's, ho, 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 and he's having none of it. He's like, how do we get this? How do we reverse this? How do we do this? And yes, it's that badass Clark that I like seeing. I like seeing Clark because that's one of the things that the show in general did was that it made Clark a much tougher character than you see in other versions, and it works. And I think that the idea of him being a very confident, I know that's what inspired John Byrne back in the '80s. He's like, you can have a Clark Kent who can stand on his own 2 feet and still have a Superman. And I do like that concept. And yeah, he's having none of this guy's story. He wants to figure out how to get it back. Although, of course, the solution that the guy comes up with is obvious, and I don't understand why Superman didn't think of it himself.
Yes, which we'll get to, but that badass Clark moment, that was another standout for me, where he's like, I can only tell Superman. He's like, you'll tell me. It was like, oh man, like that's I love seeing that. But yeah, so Dr. Watts theorizes that the extreme heat of a blast furnace could counteract the effects of the big freeze. Yeah, I don't know what, like, I guess the other question that I would have is, what would Clark have done? Would he have ever tried anything? Would he have just resigned himself to the fact that my powers are gone? I got to put on this makeup every day.
Yeah, that's the we've got 25 minutes and we've got a story to tell. So-called plot armor, because he would have. You got to figure he would have tried that. He's like, well, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could do that, or maybe I can, whatever it is. The idea that he just sort of accepts it is that it's for the plot.
Yeah, I like to think he would have eventually sought the help of a friendly scientist and explained his issue. Pepperwinkle
Pepperwinkle. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, on my other show, Digging for Kryptonite, we joke all the time about how when all else fails in a Superman story and his powers are gone or out of whack or whatever the case may be, throw him in the sun and it usually fixes it. And funny, I feel like this is sort of the 1950s equivalent of that. Like we can't go into space and throw him in the sun, but we could throw him in a blast furnace.
Right.
That's great. So following that advice, Superman subjects himself to the blast furnace flames, emerging restored back to his normal color. He arrives just in time at the polls to help a voter stand up to Duke and Jack. And finally, at the end, the Daily Planet crew celebrates the victory of their candidate. Satisfying conclusion, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, again, a couple of just a quick notes about the whole blast furnace thing. I do like the fact that Clark goes to the plant And they're like, no, it's closed. It's a holiday because it's a vote. And he's like, oh, yeah, right. He's like, well, I'm from the planet. Can't I come in anyway? And he goes, oh, yeah, come on in.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Just poke around in
Sure.
there.
Yeah, yeah, go nuts. It's not at all unsafe, and it's not all at all insecure or anything like that. So it is kind of funny. But I do like, again, the same thing, the effect of him walking in, and I don't know how they did it,
Yeah.
where he's standing there and those fire jets, like before the cut where it's like all flame, like there is they go on and you see him behind it. So I don't know how close he actually was to flame, but it's like, holy crap. And then he comes out and he has this big grin, like he's like, I'm back. It's not quite, General, would you care to step outside? But it's still, he has this moment there. He's like, I'm back. And then he goes and takes care of business. And I do love the part about the voter. He's like, hey, Superman, I got this. And he knocks both of them out with one punch. And Superman's very proud that his influence has caused a human being to heap violence on another.
Yeah. Mission accomplished. No, but yeah, the fact that he's there to help this guy fight for himself.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
really
and by the
like
way, where is the polling place? In somebody's living room?
it. Yeah, apparently.
I mean, what? It's just like it's some random apartment. Like that was weird. I'm sorry, that was really strange to me. I'm like, this doesn't really make sense. I must be missing something here.
I know.
It's not the local school.
I know. Well, and also to your point about the guard at the blast furnace, it's like,
Yeah.
it's funny because it's like, okay, we got to put some sort of obstacle to him getting to the blast furnace, but it's not much of one, right? It's
No, not really. I mean, because then you would expect that maybe he'd like run around the corner and climb his way in or something like that. But the guy's like, oh, yeah, come on in.
Well, yeah, because he doesn't have his power. So if this guard really gave
Right.
him a hard time, you would have to see him
Right.
climb, sneak, or something. But
Right.
it's just like, oh,
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
from the Daily Planet? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, come on in. I also like that he calls it the Metropolis Daily Planet, which I think is interesting too, because they don't. I mean, I can understand him, if he's in another land,
Yeah.
but he's in Metropolis. Everybody knows the Daily Planet.
Yeah, that's interesting because we know they have bureaus like all over the place. But you're right. I mean,
Right.
when he's here, we
In
don't
Metropolis,
necessarily
I'm
need to
with the Daily
differentiate.
Planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's our episode. So on a scale of 1 to 5, Great Caesar's Ghosts, how many do we give the Big Freeze?
Am I allowed to do halves?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say 3.5.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good solid. The reason the my reasons for not going higher are pedantic. I agree. One, because I do think it's a convoluted. They have this great idea about the freezing thing that is of question. It may be questionable, but it's a really cool concept. And then you've got the voter thing, which is interesting, but they don't really mesh well together. I find that it's almost like it's two episodes struggling with each other a little bit, and so I think that I can't quite give it a 4 because it does kind of take some leaps and it does get convoluted, the rationale sometimes, but taken in its individual parts, I like it very much. So I'd say 3.5. Credit to George Reeves as always for being game, and yeah, so that's where I land.
I hear you. I don't disagree that like these each could have been their own episodes, and I feel like had the plot been to discredit Superman, right, or frame him, right, you undermine the public's confidence in him right at the time where he's trying to get them to vote a certain way.
Right.
Then thematically, the entire thing comes together.
Thematically, it works a lot better.
Whereas here, yes, we have this out there sci-fi plot with the chamber and this voter intimidation. So they don't really gel. But despite all of that, when you were here for season 3 and we did Test of a Warrior, I know I stunned you with my 1 Caesar's Ghost for that. But here I'm going 4. I'm going to go 4 for this one. I like this one. I had a good time with it. Yeah. And I appreciated the challenge. I appreciated the way it challenged him. All right. So what would you like to share with people about 13th Dimension?
Well, it is, we do our thing. If you like a show like this or Digging for Kryptonite, chances are you'll enjoy what we've got. We've got a lineup of columnists and artists and contributors to the site, and it's we've been doing this now for roughly 12 years, and still having a great time doing it every day. On Mondays we do our hot picks. On Wednesdays we do our retro hot picks. Plus we've got folks like Paul Kupperberg and Bill Morrison, Des Taylor, our Scott Shaw, Franco, and I don't want to leave anybody else's names out, so I'm not going to list anymore. But no, it's really a lot of fun to do, and the readers seem to appreciate it. So if you're not familiar with us, come on by, and I hope you'll like what you find.
Right on. I hope everyone will check that out. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, audience. Make sure you come back next time. And until then, remember, only Superman can do super things. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Another way to support the show and receive exclusive content, including the spin-off podcast Beyond Metropolis, is by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please subscribe, rate, and review today via your podcast platform of choice, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Flat Squirrel Podcasts is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Another exciting episode is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Greg Schiegel and theme music by Dan Pritchard.